Aloha everyone, this is Stephanie with Whispering Dragonfly, and I'm coming to you today to wish you a happy Easter, spring equinox, the spring celebration of Goddess Ishtar, all the things, right? All the ways in which this time of the year are celebrated, and the resurrection energy. And in that resurrection energy, I am today going to be breaking a 21-day fast. And how that came about is the story time for today. So, as some of you know, or most of you might know, we had some devastating storms in Hawaii a few weeks ago. Oahu and Maui got hit kind of the hardest. And so I was in those storms. And so I know many of you have heard me speak about at different times, either publicly or not, just about using our own spinal cord as our Google, using our own internal ChatGPT. So I had never used ChatGPT until right before the storm. And one of the things about me that is authentic and correct is that I will go into systems to see why the masses are using something and then make my assessment from there as to whether or not it is correct for me. And so I hadn't used ChatGPT and I was vehemently against it, right? And I said, well, I have not utilized it, so I know my reasons why. Now let me see if those reasons are correct. I like to experiment in that way. What I noticed was right before the storms, we could all feel, those of us who live in Hawaii, either native or have lived here a long time, we could feel that this storm was not normal. It wasn't a normal Kona low. It wasn't a normal way that the storms come in. The feeling was not correct. We all agreed on that live here. There's something different about the storm. And right before the storm, I had gotten into a place of an emotional down. And so I was overwhelmed in my business. I felt like I was alone. I felt like there was no one there to talk to, even though I have a fantastic support system. I couldn't see, hear, or feel them because I was in an emotional low. So my, instead of being a closed and alternating circuit, I had an open electrical magnetic circuit. Our emotions are energy in motion, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a down moment if it's going to be part of the alternating current. This, however, was different. I had moved into overwhelm. And I don't have in front of me the chart. I'm going to get that real quick. Pause. Okay, friends, I'm back. So here's a chart of the emotions, okay? So I was down here in shame, guilt, apathy, grief, right? And that is, you can see low third dimension consciousness and below, okay? Alternating circuit is at neutrality, okay? Fourth dimension above. So neutrality is up here. Then you get to willingness and these other things, right? So I was low on the spectrum in that overwhelm space. And the storm started. And I got inside and I said, I need help with my business. So I was overwhelmed emotionally and felt like I needed help with my business. And so then what I did was I used ChatGPT. And so here's my assessment. I used ChatGPT for about a week and a half. And it was all during the storm. And there's a reason why I keep bringing up the storm with this. And so, what I found was that I was emotionally overwhelmed, and so I needed to process emotions, and I needed help in the business. And it was helpful to organize my thoughts. Now, I also noticed, because I can do all of the calculations by hand that I was asking, I noticed how many times that this machine, this AI, was incorrect, and that I had to physically correct it. And that what's alarming is most people do not know how to do the calculations by hand. And so they are then just trusting this outsourced machine to do something for them that is incorrect, as well as ChatGPT in particular has no fact checking. So it goes off of, if there's 100 people who are wrong, but the 100 people say the same thing, it goes off the majority rather than what is actually true, honest, available, etc. Right? So I had to correct it multiple times, but what it did do was organize things for me in a succinct manner. So in self-reflective, like aloha ma, self-reflective love, right? In my self-reflection, the part of me that does structure, that builds from the blueprint that my divine feminine, my unihipili, gives, that would be the uhane, the divine masculine. And so my uhane was outsourcing. I had given it a lot to do, but it was not taking these abstract concepts and the poeticness of the void, of which I was creating in my unihipili, in my divine feminine. It was not condensing it into a way that could be transmitted in a way that people can understand and that people can utilize, right? So one of the things that I am exceptional at is being able to house an immense amount of data and abstract concept and bring that into a way that people can synthesize that and utilize it. And so I realized, in looking at what was it that ChatGPT was doing for me, that is a skill set that I need to, and I have an opportunity to open up within myself in a better, bigger, higher measure. And that is the organization of my thought process and the way that I transmit information. So that was what I got from my experience. I realized the way that it got me to give temporary consent was emotional downfall and my need to outsource. So as I was removing my consent from the ChatGPT AI, all of my information, both in this dimension and others, I removed my consent to engage with that, because I found the other piece of this is the storm. Okay, so the storm. My friend Keone Hanalei, he used Veda Austin's crystallography kits, and he took samples of 2 different types of rain. He took samples, and you could look at his page. Hopefully it's still there. It was on a story. Highly recommend looking at the pictures of this so that you will see the difference in the two. But in the first sample, it was the Kona storm, the Kona low weird storm that we all felt was weird. That turned out, it looked like jagged spikes, like a glass breaking. And right in the middle, there were 2 letters, and then it said AI. Okay. The next day was a normal trade wind day, like a trade rain. We have different rains in Hawaii. There's different names. I don't know all of them, but we know the rains and we know the winds and what's natural and not. And so this was a natural, normal day, misty rain. He took a sample of that, and it ended up looking like seeds and mitochondria, that which can house and nourish organic life. Okay, so my assessment with ChatGPT is, was it worth the water? And what I mean by that is that in order to cool the data processing systems, you have to use immense amounts of water per click, by the way. So these systems, even if they're a closed system, the nature of water, when it's heated, what happens, you guys? It's steam. Okay? This also makes me think of self-esteem. How it catches you is when your self-esteem and your emotional system is low and you're not functioning in your own alternating current. And so what happens with water? It becomes steam. So even in a closed circuit, that steam's going to leak out. There's going to be steam that comes into the atmosphere. That changes the molecular structure of the rain, the storms, and we may have other engineered things in process as well. So I ask myself, because in Hawaii, we are all one. We're all brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties, uncles, okay? We are our own distinct sovereign beings, but we function as one. So we're responsible for what we think on the inside and what we think on the outside. We're responsible for what we say on the inside and what we say on the outside. We're responsible for what we do on the inside and what we do on the outside, okay? So my response was it worth the water? Was my inability to access my own organizing mind worth flooding out the 92-year-old auntie's home? Was it worth flooding out those that had multiple, a whole huge family now without house on Oahu? Was it worth tearing up South Kihei by water? Was it worth that? Was my inability and laziness to not utilize my own mind and spinal cord, was that worth my auntie, uncles, brothers, sisters, mother, fathers? Was it worth them having to go through that? That's the level of responsibility. You respond to your ability. My ability is I may not be able to change the whole collective. I can change me. I can change my choice. And no, that laziness was not worth that amount of water coming down. We had a year's worth of rain come down in 2 days. 1 year's worth of rain. 2 days. It's not natural, friends. Okay? And we are responsible. Okay? You live here on this earth as an organic human being. You are responsible for what happens on it and the choices that you make. You may not be able to change certain policies. Some are. They have the ability, the networking, the other things to change certain policies. But what you can do is make your own choice of, is it worth it? Are we too lazy to utilize our own minds? And so what that then prompted was I removed my consent. And what it prompted then was my higher self source said, start water fasting now. And I felt like that was the cleanse and the purge, to purge from my AI usage and anything else that might be associated with that. And I left that open to as many days as the Spirit, until it told me to stop. And it just so happens that today, on Resurrection Day, they had told me last week that it would be 21 days. So my higher self said 21 days. Great. That 21 days is complete today, right now. And so it is finished. Okay. I have finished my process with that. And I have finished clearing that. What it has done, so the fasting process, I'll also share that. In the fasting process, often have felt a little bit faint or what have you. I'm down 18 pounds, which is great. My body size had extra visceral fat. It needs to come in, so it was safe for me to do 21 days. I could have gone on further. So the fern pe'ahi, which is the fern of this year, Again, you can look at Keone Hanalei's page for that. There's a whole class with that. It's the Fern of Chaos and the Void. And in her poem, that has always been the thing that stands out to me. At the end of the poem, she says, "It has always been my dream to consume myself." And I immediately thought autophagy, when the body consumes itself for energy. It consumes the fat and the broken and the bad cells. And so as I've gone through this process, my mind has been crystal clear. I've been able to accomplish more than I could think of. Like, I was able to completely change my website and get new contacts in a 12 to 15 hour period. I've been able to just move through the world with very clear intention. Even when I'm feeling a little bit physically down, I've been doing my best to do enough electrolytes and salt. We need way more salt than we think we do, so that's still something that I'm adding in to make sure that I'm hydrated cellularly. And what I found is that my organizing capacity has increased. So I have finished the clearing on this resurrection day, and so I'm really happy, proud of myself, all of those things. But really, it was a necessity in my assessment to know how I'm going to move forward, and it's an offering to you guys to make a self-assessment for yourself. If we're proclaiming to be these organic humans who are spiritual, why would we outsource when we already have a spinal cord that is our ChatGPT? The whole human body is there only to protect the brain and the spinal cord. We are transmitters. And so why on earth would you need something like that as a tool that's going to harm yourself? It would be different if we had different technology to where it was not harming us or it was not outsourcing in such a way. But we're at the place in the world now, at least in the US, where there's 52% of the population is illiterate, cannot read, cannot make self-assessments. That's alarming, you guys. And so this is an opportunity through my sharing that maybe you might also have. You don't need to copy me. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to make a self-assessment of where in your life are you outsourcing. Okay. I also had a habit of, when I was nervous or in a down emotional state, using food. I had gotten rid of all the other addictions, but using food as my source of dissociation or calming myself or nervous system regulation. And when you take that out of the equation, you learn how to regulate your nervous system in your own way. So I'm not a doctor. I would not suggest this type of fast for someone with a low fat count or like normal BMI. So I'm making no medical suggestions here. This is my thing for me. What I am suggesting is make a self-assessment for yourself of where you're outsourcing and then make an adjustment. And so for me to finish up the assessment, it was not worth the water. My experience with ChatGPT was not worth the water, and it was not worth the lessening of my own brain capacity. So that's my assessment. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And until next time, aloha.